We got ourselves a 90 horse Johnson or Evinrude to work on today. We're doing a water impeller, water pump. Sits down in the lower end. So we gotta take all these bolts off, you know, but we're gonna start up here because we gotta get the shift cable or the shifter loose. It's way down in there. We're gonna start off taking this cover off. A couple of bolts. Now's a good time to clean your carbs. Do a couple of other things. Let's get started. I'll get that cover off. We got our cover off. Now it's time to take the plate off. We got these bolts. We're just gonna loosen this choke right here. Take that bolt out, that bolt. And a couple of bolts on your VRO2 pump right here. And it should have a vacuum hose behind it somewhere or something, but you get the point. Let's take this guy off. All right, we got our VRO2 pump loose. I believe those were 5/16 bolts. 7/16 on all the bolts. That outer cover, 7/16 on these four. And we got some 3/8 bolts right here on the shifters. That's holding down this little guy. They've got flat heads. Had to use a flat head to get the bottom one. So this is all pretty much loose. We're gonna take these shifter cables off here. Throttle cable, whatever. And where's that socket at? Get over here, you little sucker. There we go. See what size these guys are. Yep. 3/8 on those. So we're gonna loosen these two up, take them out of the way. All right, pop those shift cables off, and this just fell forward. And there's your vacuum hose right there on the back. There it is. Now we're gonna work on getting the carbs off. This primer, this choke, it's got a broken nipple. There's supposed to be 3 of them on there, so we're gonna replace that. There is one of the hoses that go to that broken nipples right here, and it goes to that top of the carb. That nipple is broken, so we'll replace that too. And we'll give the carbs a cleaning. So now we're gonna get the carbs off. The carbs have 4 bolts, 1 on each corner. So we're gonna take those suckers off. All right, I'll show you what I did to release the shifter. Right here, let's see, right here, this guy, there is a, let's see, there's the camera. All right, this guy right here, it pulls in and out to lock in with the shifter. Behind it is this little clip. You pull that out and then you push this in. That's where your shift cable was sitting. See? But anyways, you pull that pin and then you push it in. It might take a little pop. But now, if we can see that shifter, I don't know if you can see down in there, but that, yep, there it is right there. Focus that. That shifter is now loose. See, there's a little pin behind that vacuum line. There's a little pin. It goes through the shifter and goes back through the ear closest to us. But anyways, when you push it backwards, the pin comes out of the shifter, and the pin is attached to this whole lever going through there. So now our shifter's disconnected, and we can drop our lower end. Wow, I don't know what's going on with my camera right now. There we go. I fixed it. Pressed the wrong button. Anyways, now that shifter's disconnected, start dropping the lower end. I don't think I'm gonna film cleaning the carbs. This little guy I just got a replacement for, the prime. So you just take the 4 bolts off. It came with a new gasket and lever. Pretty easy. as far as that broken off nipple goes. We're gonna have to extract that with like some vice grips or something, start twisting. And then I've got a spare nipple inside from another motor. And I'll put a little JB weld or epoxy on it and shove that new one in. That's how we're gonna replace that. We got our motor raised up. You got 2 bolts on this side, 2 bolts on the other side, 9/16. Then you got this plate to take off. You got another bolt up underneath of there, right there. That's the hidden bolt. There's also another bolt right there that holds that little guy in place. Anyways, we'll take all these bolts loose. This lower end's to drop for us. All right, it just fell right out of there. I supported it with one hand while I was getting the last bolt out. There we go. It just slid right out. Shifter, drive shaft. Here it is right here. Here's our exhaust boot. Make sure that's in there good when you put it back together. Now here's our water pump housing, water impeller housing. And yeah, I can see it's melted right there and there. So we're gonna take these 4 bolts out and see what it looks like. Here's our impeller housing out. So you can see these 2 bolts here. That's a separate little piece. There's a seal in there that seems pretty fried. That's where it shoots the water up to. Make sure you line that up when you put it back on. But yeah, this housing is melted all over the place. That gasket, there's a gasket around it. It's melted over on that corner. Metal's worn out. Impeller's melted on each fin. This plate is looking pretty good. Gasket should be fine. What I'm gonna do is just get a whole housing kit. So this just pops right off. It's sealed with that seal there, seal gasket. This water impeller has a little notch with a keyway, and that's what locks it in place on this flat spot. So that's how that goes. Let's get a kit coming. We got our new kit in. Comes with bolts, O-rings, new seal, all kinds of stuff. I got a white housing. It's the same housing, it's just different color. Alright, so I put the new gasket and plate on that came with the kit. Here's our new water pump. And I got the key set up, so if it's in neutral, if I turn to the right, it's locked in, it actually spins. And it's gonna spin clockwise looking down. So you want these fins to be pointed backwards to fit over this dude. So it's a little tricky to get that in there because it's big. All the fins have to be bent. I'm gonna show you real quick the keyway. See if I can pull this up without losing it. It's hard to get out. Now the keyway is locked in. There it is. Oh, I lost my keyway. It was on the back side. Take this impeller back off. You see the little notch. There's a flat spot here on this outside where my finger is. That has to be facing upwards when you put it on, or else it won't go on. So I like to line up my little notch, put it on, figure out which impeller fin it's pointing at, which would be this one right here that I got my hand on. So I'll spin to the keyways pointing straight up, well, straight backwards. Make sure I put my impeller on the right way. I got my fin. Bada boom. This key can only fit on one way. Oh goodness, I believe it fits like that. Might be this way. I have to take another look. I can't do it while I'm holding onto the camera. Pretty sure it fits that way. And you gotta hold onto it with your finger and press down and line it up with this fin going down. That's how you get that on there. All right, so we got the water pump inside its housing. It's easier to put the water pump on the housing and then slide it down the top. Got the keyway lined up, see it spins. So now, we've got this guy prepped. I use a little grease to keep the O-ring in place. Got my new piece here with the seal inside here. And the seal here all came with the kit. So the groove on this guy lines up with this groove. It fits right in there. You could dry fit it before you put it on the shaft, and you'll see what I'm talking about. So I've got to line this guy up. The groove starts at the water pump outlet. We slide this guy over here. Our groove is, let me double check, to the counterclockwise. We gotta get that guy to line up on there. Once you get it lined up, then you can put the 4 bolts through. Make sure your gasket and plate didn't slip. The bolt goes through all 3 of those pieces: gasket, plate, housing. So I need my other hand so I can spin this shaft and line up this housing. All right, we got her back on there. You got your 2 bolts down on each side and 1 right up the middle there. Now we get to put this little doohickey back on. Boom. Pops on right there. And then I'm gonna lower the motor. It's easier to put this thing on, get in the motor as horizontal as possible. You can do it by yourself if you're tough enough. It's just a pain to line everything up and keep that exhaust plate from slipping at the same time. And this one, the water pump pipe that leads up to the top of the motor, was a bit wobbly. It was hard to line up. I made sure everything was lined up, started tightening the bolts. Got our motor trimmed down, and I got my shifter hooked up. I wish I could have filmed it. I needed a helper for this while I was doing it. So let's see if we could see the pin in there with the camera. This is a little tricky. Right between those hoses, right past those hoses. Let's see if I can get it to focus right on there. See, my shifter is pressed in. That little silver dot, that's the pin of going through the pin going through the shifter. There's a little silver in the middle, and then the pin hitting the other side of the cage of the shifting mechanism. Like your shifter's right here, and that it goes over the 2 like that, and the pin slides through. So to get the pins to slide through, you got to pull outwards towards myself on this. But most of the time when you get done with these, the shifter's not perfectly straight, like the hole's off center. So you got to get a flashlight in there. I used this little pick, and I put it down in there to get a grip on that shifter and pull it towards me, while with my left hand I angled this down, spun it down to get it lined up with the hole, and then pulled towards me to lock it in while having this pick on there. It took a couple tries. It's a little tricky, but that's that. So now I've already gone through my carbs, put a new one of these doohickeys on there, fixed a nipple up here. So now I got to put everything back together. We got a couple gaskets here. This one fell off. I'm going to reuse them. I'm going to put a little sealer on there to make them stick. I use this for marine stuff. Oh, you can get it at Napa, Aviation, Forma Gasket Liquid Sealant. It's real tarry-like stuff. Use it on boats. But yeah, we're just gonna bolt everything. Start bolting everything back together. Shift cable, throttle cable, this guy. Get this guy set back in place. Got some screws to put back in the VRO2 pump. Let's get her back together. We got our plate tightened down and the pump put back on. 5/16 bolts there. This one was already like that. Got a little crack there. Don't over torque these, you'll crack them. So careful on that. 7/16 on those front bolts. We gotta hook these cables back up. Pop this plate back on. And yeah, hook up the gills to it. Make sure she's pumping water now. Yep, gotta bolt that on too. You know, just tie everything together. That should about do it. All right, make sure you got your hoses hooked up on that choke thingamajigger primer. That one's a little tight. I had to cut a little bit off because of cracking. Probably should put an extender on there. Extend it with some hose and a vacuum coupler or something. Got it bolted down. Don't forget to put your ground wire on there. And your pin on the shifter right there, little clip. Make sure you put that back in so the shifter can't go backwards. The camera's not focusing right now. Now the shifter can't go backwards, so it can't disengage or pop off of there. So we got our hoses hooked up, ground hooked up, clip in there, and good to go.